Welcome to your Friday. This is Things You Might Have Heard for Friday, September the 1st. Yes, September the 1st, 2023. I am Jay Cleveland Payne. Thank you so much for being with us as we begin the fourth quarter, and we are literally almost done with the year, and the most important thing, about 2 months and a couple days away from Christmas. Don't forget that one. We have for you today 8 top stories that you made the top stories. We took the top 15 stories from yesterday, pulled 8 of them to present you in a few moments, and you'll see which stories you said are most conversational. They're the latest in information, politics, current events, and pop culture. And as your go-to source for supplemental news, we give you both some mainstream stuff and some unconventional stuff, a lot of mainstream stuff today, and a lot of just petty sort of in people's business stuff. It is what it is for today. We're glad you're here with us to give us what to talk about. We'll explain more how that works in a bit. Go to our main website, thisisAconversationproject.com, to get a bit more detail on that one, but not right now because we're chatting right now. We're doing this right now. Let's get into the right here, right now. Oh, yeah, that guy. We're talking about that guy. If you're watching the video, that guy is pretty prominent, and we'll get to him pretty quickly. So let's get into the actual news stuff for the day. As we said earlier, it really is Friday the 1st of September, 2023. News stories to kick off the days. Actually, the most important thing, the number one story that we got from you is the fact that Taylor Swift is coming to a theater near you. AMC movie theaters to play Taylor Swift concert films and anticipate Ticketmaster woes. So they have beefed up their ticketing system for AMC as the upcoming Eras Tour concert movie, all those things will be playing at an AMC theater near you very, very, very soon. What's going to happen is you'll buy a ticket through AMC's ticket thing, which are about right now $19.89 for adults, $13.13 for children and seniors, and you can get them and hope that the ticket sales doesn't burst. Now, basically every seat in the house is a good seat, but will you get a seat? We shall see. If you didn't know that this concert was up for sale now, you better get to your computer pretty quickly because I'm pretty sure they're going to sell these out pretty fast in the theaters. But if you didn't get a chance to see the concert or want to just live it again, check it out in air conditioning glory with snacks, which is the best way to do this, at an AMC theater coming up to near you, coming up in a few months where the actual movie will show. But get your tickets. Trust me, you need to get them right now. Let's deal into first some business of private business from famous people. Then we have a lot of politicians to kind of dig into for a bit. We're starting off with Kevin Costner and his ex-wife, mostly his ex-wife. She's breaking down in court about having the prenup redone to take care of her because of a relentless jihad, that is a quote from her, of animosity, another quote, between the parties going back and forth. Essentially, Kevin Costner is a rich guy with a lot of money to pour towards very, very mean lawyers to basically ruin her life, that being Baumgartner. And because of that, she's looking to reopen the prenup and make things a bit more favorable for her in the amount of child support and spousal support, because Kevin Costner, apparently in his older age, is a bit more spiteful, a bit more vengeful, and maybe a lot more like his character on Yellowstone than people think. We're going to see how this one plays out as we are dealing in people's personal lives, although the personal lives of people are kind of famous and have lots of money, which is why we are so into it. We should not be, but we are. We shall see this thing play out for quite some time, going through whatever. Now, the details of them splitting up is a whole nother ball of wax that we don't need to get into because that just gets it really, really nasty. But what we're looking at right now is the ending of the marriage and the ending of the relationship and the taking care of the kids for the moment. We're going to see how this thing plays out, obviously in court. And I watch a lot of these legal type folks on YouTube, and they're breaking this thing down pretty extensively. So we'll have some insight. Maybe we'll bring someone in for a conversation at some point. Mitch McConnell might be freezing up in public because he's having small seizures. That's what a doctor suggests, and many doctors actually. These are doctors that, of course, aren't his doctor. They're just watching him on TV, much like people were playing psychologist for Donald Trump, but saying, but by the way, he's not my patient, but for what I'm seeing, he might be kind of nuts. That's what people are saying here. 3 doctors are sort of speaking out on what they think they're seeing from Mitch McConnell. They believe he's having mini strokes, just in his seizures in the moment, that are just sort of seizing up and shutting down his brain and just kind of getting him out there. Yes, he had a concussion a few months ago. Yes, he's probably dealing with dehydration and some lightheadedness from the concussion. Yes, he's like 80 years old. So all these things are factors. But in the meantime, they're happening right now, and this is the second time he's had a public seizure. Especially weird because the question he was asked was, are you going to run again based on your health? And then he kind of stood there for about 30 seconds doing nothing. It's very awkward if you're listening to this and hearing all the awkward silence. It gets really jarring and it really gets your head. If you're watching me speak, you can at least see I'm standing here or sitting here, but it also is jarring that there's nothing being said. When we do it for effect, do it for a pause, do it for kind of a little dramatic flair, it's one thing. But when you're in the middle of a sentence and you just stop talking, it's a bit scary. No word on whether he is going to step down. He is going to run for re-election. He's going to push things down. But the thing that's said is, essentially, there's 3 guys named John who are standing in line to be the next minority somewhat leader of the Senate. And so if McConnell does step down, one of the 3 Johns is going to take this job. You can look up the Johns on your own. Let's talk to Clarence Thomas, or about Clarence Thomas. We can't really talk to him because he don't talk to nobody. But he's talking to folks in a new document that says he's disclosing some trips, private trips, with Harlan Crow specifically, and like 3 of them. That's it. Over 30 years of a friendship, of hanging out with the man, he's disclosed in a new financial document about basically 3 private trips. Also, Justice Samuel Alito, at least some new financial disclosures as well, talking about some things he got that have been inadvertently omitted from past forms. This is sparking a growing part of the debate on whether the justices of the Supreme Court need to be regulated like the federal judges do, because, they might get bribed, they might get taken off. I watch too many crime movies and think these ways, but that's why they regulate those folks. The Supreme Court has supposed to be in such high esteem because they are high esteemed people. But at least one guy, Uncle Clarence, is not playing by the rules, and he has not been playing by the rules essentially since his confirmation. If we had his confirmation today, yeah, we let guys who did just as many bad things go wild. But the long dong silver and the pubic hairs on Coca-Colas should not fly in 2023 like they did 30 years ago. We shall see how Clarence Thomas works. He ain't going nowhere because he ain't going nowhere. But we'll see if there's going to be a greater push and whether they can actually make it stick to regulate the justices of the Supreme Court. Now it's time to beat up on Tim Scott, who isn't married. Not so much a bad thing, but GOP donors are kind of like, you're 457 and why have you never been married? Which brings up another thing about South Carolina legislature, because, Lindsey Graham, he's older than Tim Scott, and he's never been married. And they talk about him as well. But they don't talk so much about Tim Scott with what's going on, because Tim Scott essentially throws out as, well, it's more time for me to work for you. And Tim Scott says he's actually dating someone right now, but is kind of keeping it in the background. He's got that super secret girlfriend from back home that nobody knows about because, he's running for president and is bad enough being a black Republican. Being a black Republican and bringing some other person into the fold is kind of deadly for her. She kind of likes to keep this woman around just in case he doesn't make it. Now, in the last cycle, or cycle prior, I believe, when we had Cory Booker and Bob Kerrey many cycles ago, both running for president, it was kind of similar. Cory Booker, who was famous for being single, was running around with one of my future ex-wives, that's Rosario Dawson, and he obviously could not hold on to that bottle rocket. Bob Kerrey just wasn't dating while running for president because he kind of was busy running for president. Much like Tim Scott saying, I'm kind of busy working right now, so I'll go to dating, when that happens. We hadn't had a president that was unmarried in the White House for like 100 years, so it may seem like a weird thing, but in these times and these days, there's a lot more men and a lot more women these days who are rising up a corporate ladder and a political ladder without having the accoutrements of being married. And also we're seeing less of them having issues with having to get divorced, because that happens a lot. Think Gavin Newsom and that lady who's now hanging out with the Trump kid. Instead of all these things, they're just focusing on work. So Tim Scott trying to be your next president of the United States, and he's going to do it, at least when he's elected and sworn in, probably unmarried. If that happens. It's not going to happen. If that happens. It's not going to happen. Let's go to the story out of Johannesburg. This was breaking news yesterday as we were building up to yesterday's actual broadcast of Things You Might Have Heard. The headline is pretty gruesome. Johannesburg apartment fire kills 73. Building reportedly occupied by homeless. This is essentially a thing in South Africa, because of the disparity in wealth. There's a whole lot of poor people and a whole lot less of people with wealth. There still is maybe not official apartheid, but there still is a lot of racial injustice and unweightness and things like that. And also, there's a lot of refugees in South Africa who just ended up there because they take them more or less, or more or less they don't kick them out because there's already so many poor people. What's another bunch of poor people living there? These buildings are essentially municipal buildings owned by the government that are basically abandoned or just not taken care of, and most of them have just been overrun by gangs. So it's a building that's run by the government that a gang just sort of takes over. The government doesn't deal with it because it's not their problem at this point, and they bring in all sorts of poor people and refugees to live in these slums as they go. And they're very, very, very poorly ran, very poorly kept. As you can see, one fire took this building out pretty quickly, even though it was smoldering for 12 hours after the fire. This particular building was used to produce IDs for black apartheid workers. So this is history, if you will, but history as an old-time building that was just not in up to shape, that someone took over, someone had people living in, and someone did not take care of it, not taking good care of the people living there. Very sad story out of Johannesburg. We are definitely mourning the loss of the 73 and the families there. And you may not remember the old Sun City type of stuff from, back when I was a kid in the 80s and how the apartheid was a thing, but essentially apartheid, or an unbalanced lifestyle of various people, very much still a thing in various places. Finally, late night talk show hosts team up for a new podcast amid the writer's strike. We sort of brought this up yesterday, and it was kind of hard to explain about Strike Force 5, because this is where we got the information about Jimmy Kimmel saying he was probably going to retire. Then the strike happened, and so now he thinks it's going to be nice to keep working once this thing comes through. Strike Force 5 is a podcast series with 5 of the big late night talk show hosts, although John Oliver is basically a weekend guy. I'm not sure he's a late night guy, but it encourages some work without writers and some actual connectivity between 5 of the big talk show hosts, being Jimmy Kimmel, John Oliver, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Fallon. They've got 12 episodes of this thing basically going to go for this. They are kind of just trying to keep their chops up and trying to keep information going on with what's going on with them, how things are going, and how they're actually dealing with the strike, with both the writers, which affects them directly, and the actors, which sort of affects them, even though they play more on writers than actors for their shows. It's going to be an interesting thing. I've not subscribed to it yet. I've not listened to the one that Kimmel's talked about already, about him retiring yet, but we're going to pick this up. There's a lot of podcasts out there, including ours. So if you enjoy your pods being cast to you, check it out. It's just 5 guys meeting on Zoom, having some talk back and forth, and it's pretty funny from what the details say, but it's also very insightful for what's going on. 12 episodes expected. We'll see how long they go further, if the strike goes further along as well. For our, we have one more story. And that story happens to be this one right here. The inventor behind the rush of AI copyright suits is trying to show his bot is sentient. A little gap in my script, so I didn't see it pop up there. And so the federal judge in the U.S. has decided that an artificial intelligence called Dabus can't claim the copyright of a pixelated pastoral scene of a train tracks running under a moss-flecked bridge because it's an AI. It's not real. But the guy behind the AI is saying, oh yeah, my AI is sentient. It can think. It is like a child who wants to learn, and that's what's going on. It's all sort of nutty. So check out the link we have in our details. You'll see in the description about this one. One guy says his AI is already sentient, not the people who are worried about the other ones turning live and turning to Skynet. His is already sentient, his already thinks, and his is able to claim copyrights. That was a pause for dramatic effect. Now we're down to our apologies, errors, and omissions section here on things you might have heard. And we want to do more into the story. In fact, we'll probably do more on the weekend to make sure it's into the list so you can kind of talk about it. But right now, we did not pull a long, detailed story on black teen Ralph Yarl, who, of course, was knocking on the wrong door, went to pick up his little brother at one house, was one street over, and was shot by a white man who just opened the door and just blasted him at the door. The white man who shot Mr. Yarl, will stand trial for shooting the black teen being at the wrong house. We will definitely pay attention to that one as trial goes through, and of course, as more details come out there. Now, let's prepare yourself for the weekend with the weekend's teaser story and the explanation on how we got the stories for today. We pull for you here at the Conversation Project 8 stories from the top 15 per day for Tuesday through Friday. For Monday, we're going to give you the whole weekend's worth of stories, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a little bit of Monday. And we're going to take the top 30 stories and pull 10 stories to give you in Monday's edition. That's how it works. And all you need to do is follow us. Be a part of the family. Do what you can do to put the words in my mouth. Simple. Go to our website, find more details about how we do this every single day, and go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter, or X, whatever we want to call it these days. On Twitter /X, it is /th_conversation. That's our page there on the twits with the X. And on Facebook, go to this is a conversationproject.com. We put out a new news headline about every 50 minutes for you to engage in. And we ask you to engage as much as you want to. If it's something that catches your interest, like it if you like it. Love it if you love it. Hate it if you hate it. And just give it the engagement that you think it deserves. And over the course of the weekend, come Monday morning, we'll take the score for the engagement from Twitter and Facebook, put them all together, and the higher engaged stories go to the top. That's simple. We'll pull the top 30 stories out, and we'll take from those 10 stories to present to you in that edition. The rest of the week, it'll be 8 stories from top 15. Go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter and tell us what to talk about. You do this every single weekday. You also will do this coming up for the weekly wrap-up. I'll explain that to you in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsor. The sponsor this week we're highlighting is Hostage Tape. Hostage Tape is one of the funniest things that we've been selling to you guys, but it's one of the best things we've been selling you guys. Hostage Tape is literally mouth tape. It's like ace bandages that you put over your mouth to keep your mouth closed. Why would you do that? Because you're a bad breather. You are a terrible breather, and you need to breathe through your nose so you get the full effect of the air coming into your nostrils and going through your lungs, not shallow breathing through your mouth. So you can use Hostage Tape while you're exercising, especially while you're running, and really especially to save your life and maybe your marriage by wearing it at nighttime. Don't put a big piece of Band-Aid on your nose. That's stupid. Put mouth tape on your mouth and keep your mouth closed. It is comfortable. It is not going to kill you. It may sound a little weird, but trust me, the people who use it are swearing by the use of such a great product. It is the strongest and most comfortable mouth tape on the planet. They say so. I think you may agree once you try it. Check them out at our affiliate link at thisistheconversationproject.com/hostage tape. Just like it sounds. This is theconversationproject.com/hostage tape. This is an affiliate link, so we get paid if you buy from Hostage Tape. So check them out and see if they'll take care of you. If they do, they'll take a little care of us with a small commission for the sale. So now we talk about the Conversation Project, us. Yesterday we talked about RVing. Today we're talking about us, the Conversation Project. And this is conversationproject.com is our home at the internets, where you can find details about things you might not have heard. Find details about the weekly wrap-up, which will come out tomorrow on Saturday, where we'll give you the top 10 stories per the pure numbers of engagement, not any intervention by me trying to make a more spiffy sort of presentation. We'll also have the story of the week, which will be a editorializing story on one of those top 10 stories of the week. And we'll have some special missive TikToks on various news stories as I have a little extra time to play around with you guys and get some things in. How does all this stuff work? As like we said earlier, you follow us on our feeds on Facebook and Twitter, and you tell us every single day and for the weekend what we are talking about when I go to you, present it live and in recordings on this internet thing. You can also stop by your email machine and email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com and tell us exactly what we need to do to improve, to keep doing the same, or to just not do as bad. Because sometimes it's about not doing as bad as opposed to doing better. We also ask you to stop by our sponsorship page every so often, see where we can find us in various different forms. And if you think we're doing good work and want to help us do more of it, stop by our partnerships page and see if there's ways that we can group up like Voltron and take on the evils of internet trolls, or maybe bring more trolls in. I don't know. It's whatever. We're going to work together to do more stuff like this for the good, hopefully, and you can help us that there as well. We thank you in advance for all the love. The biggest love you can do is follow us on the feeds, engage in the stories, and tell us what to do a little bit better or a lot less worse, based on your mileage may vary. Okay, so it's time for what we call the second show. This is the fun stuff that happens every single episode of Things You Might Have Heard, and the fun stuff begins right now. We always begin the fun stuff with birthdays, and as we go into the 9th month of the year, so I screwed up the quarters, but we're almost there. September 1st birthdays are today. We'll figure out the whole quarter thing in a bit. Math not working this morning. We send very special love to Barry Gibb, 77 years old today, the survivor of the brothers Gibb, who one of the most influential disco bands, if you will, the Bee Gees. And they're not just, pop stuff from disco balls from the 70s and 80s and, hairy chests and big old chains, although they were a lot of that. They were pioneers, literally pioneers of the music genre in that era, and have just been an influence to so many people, even to this day. You don't get Destiny's Child singing Emotion if you don't have the Bee Gees doing Emotion. You don't get the love for disco and things in the past without something like the Bee Gees contributing to the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever. You don't get Danny Zuko with the hair, even though that wasn't Danny Zuko, on those things. Barry Gibb, lots of love today on his 77th birthday. Lots of love to another pioneer, person who pushed a lot of boundaries in music, Gloria Estefan, who, of course, was part of the Miami Sound Machine and doing her thing on her own. 66 years old on the day, a big part of the pop culture music scene back in my younger days, performing in my music days in the 80s and early 90s, going into my radio stuff. So a lot of Gloria Estefan being played all over, and we should play some today as well. Also, Zendaya, who may seem like she's always a teenager, she's almost 30. That should make you feel old, because you are old. Zendaya, very talented actress, 27 years old today. I think she actually has a singer too. I think she has like a couple singles out, because they all do that at some point in time. But of course, in that really, really weird show that we don't talk about because it's kind of nasty, and in Spider-Man, and other things too. But she's 27 years old on this date. Our history lesson for today, going way, way back to the 1900s, 05 to be exact. On this day, September 1st in 1905, Alberta and Saskatchewan became the 8th and 9th province of Canada. Way back in 1905. Happy birthday, Alberta and Saskatchewan. In 2018, not so far back, the memorial service for Senator John McCain was held at Washington National Cathedral, and his daughter, Meghan McCain, Barack Obama, and George Washington spoke at the thing. Very famous for Donald Trump not showing up because he was asked to not show up. That was a dramatic pause for effect, just in case you were wondering. And I don't really remember these being on the same day, but apparently history says it was. 2018, Aretha Franklin's funeral was held in Detroit with a procession of 140 pink Cadillacs. Oh, I remember both of these events. I just don't quite remember them being on the same day. But apparently my history book, or at least my history source, is telling me they were. We are going to celebrate the lives and the music in some sense, and the works in both senses of both folks. John McCain, not much of a musician, but hey, we're just going to kind of ramble on with that one, go forward, going deeper. Today, on September the 1st, we are celebrating Burnt Ends Day. Now, what is Burnt Ends Day? Burnt ends are kind of like the most awesomest part of the brisket. Now, back in the day when, we weren't all as sophisticated with all our meats and things like that, a lot of things that were seen as, wasteful had to be sort of convinced to be used. Believe it or not, chicken thighs, the whole drumsticks weren't really a big thing until someone kind of pushed it in marketing. Ribs were basically throwaway foods, and then somebody decided to put a rack in some place and put some sauce on it and watch people watch it for hours, and it turned into something that was a delicacy that is overly priced. And burnt ends, when you bake a brisket, when you cook a brisket, when you smoke long cook a brisket, the problem with the big old thick meat that it is is that the ends are a little thinny. So as time goes on, the ends get a little charred, a little burnt into what's going on. And when people present brisket either in a restaurant to eat or specifically for competitions, they cut off the ends and kind of trim it up so it looks pretty. And they also serve up burnt ends as a part of the presentation if you go to a barbecue contest. Me being a seasoned barbecue judge, I got my official card over there on my desk, know these things. Burnt ends are very delicious pieces of brisket that you have to get. You've got to get some burnt ends if they offer them up to you. Today, bake a brisket just for the burnt ends and then eat the brisket tomorrow. We'll say that. And finally, one more thing you might not have heard. Monday, which you probably have heard, is Labor Day, and no one really knows who invented it. As legend goes, a young carpenter named Peter McClure stood before the New York Central Labor Union in May of 1882, proclaiming his plan to honor all workers with a parade through the city, but another union worker, the similarly named machinist Matthew McGuire, is also credited with proposing a day off for laborers. A New Jersey newspaper published an opinion article touting McGuire as the father of Labor Day, but only after the day became a national holiday in 1894. Back in 1884, the American Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions declared that May 1st, 1886, all employees institute an 8-hour workday. That happened. When the proclamation failed to come to fruition, I guess it didn't quite happen then, workers moved to strike, sparring the brutal Haymaker riot of Chicago. That did happen. Years later, in 1898, fearing the tainted history of what the date would eventually lead to radical movements commemorating riots, President Grover Cleveland decided to follow the lead of several states and make the first Monday in September the official holiday for laborers. That was a hard read, so I apologize for that. So in May, there is May Day, which is sort of the day seen for labor around the world, although that's seemed kind of in a way more or less a kind of a communist type of thing. Here in the States, we have our Labor Day. The official Labor Day is the first Monday in September. Is also the unofficial end to the summer because it's about labor. September is essentially the drawback from the hot to the cold. We'll see how well that works here in this heat we have here. But summer more or less officially ends, and of course you have to stop wearing white. Although, guess what? I'm a nonconformist. I'm wearing white until October because I can. I also can go ahead and wrap this thing up for the day because it is done. Today has been Friday, September the 1st, 2023, as we present to you today's edition of Things You Might Have Heard. Hopefully the stories we had for you today were satisfying, pretty good, pretty interesting. If they weren't, email us at the conversation inbox at gmail.com. Visit us at thisisaconversationproject.com and tell us what it is we're doing not so great, and we'll do less of it. We promise. In the meantime, prepare yourself for the weekend. We have the weekly wrap-up coming out tomorrow, which will give you the top 10 stories per your peer engagement. Also, story of the week. One of those stories we will editorialize and hopefully do you well with that one. A little bit of extra conversation content throughout the weekend and prepping for a Monday edition of this thing. Keep an eye on the feeds all weekend long so you know what to talk to us about and we know what to talk to you about. It's that simple. Thank you so much for being a part of the family. Make sure you're staying hydrated, staying limber and on task for all the grand things you're meant to do for this world, literally. And now, we are wrapping up. We are done. Let's see you guys again. Well, technically, we won't see you live till Monday, but let's see you guys again on Saturday for the other stuff. And then Monday, as I do this live at 5:50, let's see who shows up on time for that one.